Great. So hopefully you can all hear me nice and loud and clear. So thank you very much for joining us for our Facebook Live. It's the first one of this current lockdown, and I'm really excited to introduce Martin Forde. And we've got a good topic today. So, Martin, let me bring you in. Make sure that there you are.
Right, Jamie. There you go.
Great.
Thanks very much. Right.
No problem. So we were just discussing briefly what our topic was going to be, and it's a question that when we're in the gym, or actually when you meet anybody and you tell them what you do, it's always the first type of question that they ask. They always say, well, what's the right diet for me? And well, we joke about it with people because they say the best diet for you is the one that you're going to be able to stick to. And people, I think, sometimes they sort of differentiate between the diet that they're on, or they don't think of it as a diet, but yes, obviously that's what they're eating. And but we always say, you're actually on a diet at the moment. So we were talking about it earlier, and we were saying, what would we say to people if they were wondering what is the best type of diet for them to follow? So I'll bring you in on that great question.
Jamie, thanks. It's a very basic question, all right. And my approach to this probably would be to recommend to people to eat close to nature. Yeah. I mean, that has to be the fundamental. So a diet that is composed of foods that are not very far processed from nature. In other words, you can cook your spinach in the evening. We don't consider that to be very far removed from nature. If you eat your salad, that's even closer to nature. If you eat meat, then fresh meat is closer to nature than processed meat, which, as you may know, has health problems that fresh meat doesn't have. And you can go on down the line with all the different foods and try to decide whether is it close to nature or is it not. Now, the best diet for anybody is going to be one that is close to nature in that kind of a way. Now, having said that, you do have a choice because, Jamie, in the Yaduka Gym context, we'll be talking about people trying to get further into shape. Some of them will be good trainers already, others will be beginners, and what choices do they have? And we do have choices in that kind of area. But I'm warning you before we start that I would recommend a diet plus supplements. And just
Me
to give you
too.
an example of an anecdotal example of the value of supplements is we had only in the last month or so, uh, the President of America's wife, the First Lady, caught the coronavirus. And how did she get over it? With vitamins. I don't know if you saw that, but she treated
Absolutely.
herself with vitamins and got over it in a few days. Now, I can't say that vitamins are going to cure anybody, but what I say is that if you choose the right supplements, they build up your resistance, they build up your immunity,
Mm.
they support your immunity. And if, as we hope would never happen to any of us, you got in contact with this and caught it, you mightn't even notice it, and some people don't. Hopefully, that might be the perfect outcome if there was an unfortunate contagion. But the resistance that you can build up between the good diet, not taking foods which deplete your immune system, because a lot of processed foods can be depleting, literally depleting on the immune system, particularly damaged fats and that type of thing that you get
Yeah.
in manufactured foods and fast foods and all the rest of it. So I say close to nature is the first principle.
Yeah, so we would always when we're talking to people, and I think I'd noticed this from doing so many different types of diets myself, but the majority of people obviously are probably going to be in the I want to lose weight category. Certainly, a lot of people that will come into the gym, and then statistically, you can see that too. So, what are the initial changes that somebody's going to have to make if they want to start losing weight?
The Yaduka Gym offers a kickstart diet plan, which is based on the idea that you can eat protein and fat and not have carbohydrates or not have very many carbohydrates in it. That is incredibly suitable for people who are reasonably healthy to start and who can
Mm.
manage to digest fats well, because it focuses really only on good fats, by the way. It focuses primarily on good fats. And those fats, once you digest them properly, are unlikely to cause any kind of problem. And in fact, they can be quite helpful in the system. They're quite good for your immune system. So now we're talking about a diet where you take out bread and starchy foods of all kinds. And of course, when you do that, it has the big advantage of cutting out all those manufacturers, bakery goods, if you like.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies to any bakers out there or pastry makers, but they can cause a lot of problems. And if you think in terms of cutting down on floury, starchy things, as well as too many starchy potatoes and starchy other foods, then you can fill up on all the other vegetables. And then under the guidance of your great Aduca gym trainer, you can select good protein and good fat foods to eat. Now, we can discuss that later, and that's a great way to start off. But not everybody, I recognize that not everybody is happy to do that. And there is a great alternative, and that is the diet where you cut the fats out. Yeah. Now you can take carbohydrates, and in the initial stages, I probably would suggest that you would cut out starchy carbohydrates, i.e. anything made of flour or beans or such like, and particularly any, as I say, cakes or biscuits or muffins or goodness knows what, and try to reduce the carbohydrate load in the diet. After that, then you can go and you can take the right kind of proteins, and we can talk about that as we go along. Yeah. And with that right type of proteins, you can reduce the fat, because most proteins, in a sense, are a source of fat. For instance, if you have a piece of ordinary cheese, that's a source of fat. So therefore, we might cut that one out, and we might substitute proteins that were quite low in fat.
Yeah.
And it's very, very easy to do that. You just need to get the list into your head, and then it becomes quite easy. And after that, then, if you can understand that there are two basic approaches. One is to cut out the carbohydrates. The other is to essentially cut out all the fats. And I probably would recommend, certainly in the initial stage, cutting out the starchy carbohydrates from that one. Is that clear, Jamie, as to what
so the starch essentially is a stored glucose, so it acts like a sugar, and that's probably why we're doing that. It's funny, there doesn't seem to be the same rush on bread for this lockdown as there was for the last. So maybe people realized that they made a terrible mistake and ballooned in weight, and this time bread is not scarce. So, I think a lot of people
people were doing, we wouldn't be too bad. Sorry to interrupt you, but
a lot of people we would have talked to, obviously, before this lockdown would have said, "Oh, I'm not gonna allow the same thing to happen as I did last time. I'm not going to gain all that weight. I'm going to make sure that when I emerge in December, it's not looking like a Christmas turkey." So, but I think it's. So I think people, maybe because of the information that's out there, a lot of people think to themselves, okay, well, I realize it's carbohydrate that's causing some of the problem. So what is it? What is the mechanism in the body that causes you to gain weight by eating carbohydrates? It's not really calories, is it?
Whichever diet system you choose to follow, you're trying to give your glands the best possible chance to be active. When you do some exercise, it brings up hormones, which helps burn fat on your body. Now, okay, so there's an element in all of this, an element of reducing calories. There's no doubt whatever, there is an element of it. Yeah. But much more important than that is to avoid pumping up your blood sugar all the time, because people who are seriously over fat, even if they take small amounts of food, as they often try to do, then it's still pumping up their blood sugar and still continuing with their fatness level. And that is what people are faced with. So therefore, in that situation, you may have to, take them individually and create a diet program that they can manage, but which doesn't pump up their blood sugar level, which immediately signals the body, store fat.
Yeah, so it's insulin is converting excess glucose really into triglycerides, and then it's causing your fat cells to increase that level of fat, isn't it? I mean, and that's that carbohydrate effect. Of course,
there are a couple of aspects to this. First of all, the type of carbohydrate you might take. I mean, Irish people lived on potatoes. They weren't necessarily the slimmest, but they were strong. But potatoes are not massively high in carbohydrate in comparison to bread, or once we start putting sugar in and maybe a bit of fat and we have a muffin or whatever it is, then the calorie count of that goes up. And also we want to eat much more of it. And one of the disadvantages of letting your blood sugar come up too much, i.e. taking too many carbohydrates, is you feel hungry afterwards.
Yeah.
There's always a dip and you're going to feel hungry then. And that pumps up your appetite. Now, there are tricks that we can get into to help avoid that. One simple one, Jamie, is to eat a big salad. If you eat a big salad and you eat it every day, that kind of has a bit of a magic effect to control your appetite.
Yeah.
You may not want, you're going to feel full more readily. Some people eat a salad twice a day, and that is even better. Particularly, you know what I mean? It could be a program for a month, and would that not work very well? Generally, it does.
And from your experience, because naturally when we did the 12-day study, when Tony did the original 12-day university research study where people lost 7.5 pounds of body fat, gained the 3 pounds of lean tissue in that very short time frame with only 4 hours of exercise, they were much broader with their recommendations on what to eat, weren't they? I mean, it wasn't actually, here's the diet on a piece of paper. It was reduce carbohydrate, eat plenty of protein, and increase your levels of fat. Am I right in saying that?
I'm not the person to say to myself, I have to eat this exact thing every day. I'd have to get my mind into that. What I do in my mind is I say, carbohydrates. No, I'm going to cut them out now for the week, the month, whatever it's going to be. I'm not going to have any of the starchy carbohydrates. I'm going to cut out the muffins. I'm going to cut out the croissants, whatever it's going to be. I just take that kind of attitude. I like to see it black and white in my mind, and I hope it's helpful for other people to maybe take that attitude, that you just divide up the food into categories and eat the categories. Yeah. And now you can do that in the long run. You can do it continuously for a long period of time. I would sometimes say to people who ask me about that, I say, look, I'll do you a trade. You can eat anything you want on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
But I want you to keep up this eating by categories the rest of the time.
Yeah, it really is quite simple, actually, isn't it? When you think about it.
Yeah.
So from your experience then, what do people find easiest? Do they find a diet that's low in carbohydrate? Do they find the diet that's low in fat? What works the best generally?
Well, the diet that was used in the university study and has been used in the Aduca gyms to start people off is essentially a diet which is moderate in protein and high enough in fat. Yeah. And the good fats in that help you have good energy, but they also help prevent, together with the reduction of carbohydrates, they help prevent the blood sugar surges, and they allow other hormones such as growth hormone and your adrenal hormones to be more active in forming solid tissue and burning fat while you're training. So good. Is that an easy diet to do? I would think it was an easy diet to do, but when people start it, very often they say, oh, this fat, and they say, oh, where's my bread? And they feel hungry, and they eat a piece of fat, and they say, oh, I'm not sure if I feel well after that, whatever it's going to be. I can tell you that my experience of that is that almost anybody who has that reaction, drop it for a couple of days, go back to it, drop it for a week, go back to it, and now you'll find your capacity to burn those fats has increased. Yeah, that's generally what I would say to people. Not only that, but there are supplements such as choline. Now, choline is something that helps dissolve fats in your system and helps you absorb the fats, that type of thing. And if you know something about some of the fats in the foods, that too can help you absorb the fats better and burn them better.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's a little bit like if somebody hasn't been eating meat for a while and they go back to eating meat, they can almost think that it doesn't really disagree with them, it doesn't agree with them, it disagrees with them. And it's often because they don't have the mechanism and they're not used to digesting it, so it can feel like it sort of really blocks up their system. And
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and you have to let the enzymes build up. You let the enzymes build up to digest the thing. Your body can respond very well. A healthy person's body will respond and will build up the enzymes. The same is true, of certain dairy products that people say, oh, I'm allergic to. Now, I know people may have a lactose problem. I know that. I'm not suggesting you get milk and drink it. No. But the extracts of dairy products, like the various kinds of cheeses and the dairy protein that we recommend, the casein protein, be very careful before you say, oh, I can't, because that is such a valuable food in the overall context of either of these diets. Why? Yeah. Because it gives you great calcium. And the big mistake that people may make, say, on any kind of a slimming diet is not having enough calcium. Now, can I jump on to the second kind of diet, which is the fruit, salads, and meat diet, where you don't have much fat at all? So you have maybe a list of low-fat foods like ground steak and liver and egg whites and what have you. A popular enough diet. The difficulty that people run into with that is that they may not bother with calcium. They might put a small yogurt in or something. That doesn't give you any calcium to speak of. It doesn't give you what you need. Now, this is a hot topic with me, because to get enough calcium for what you need, you'd probably need to take 2 sachets of protein a day. If you have the protein sachets, 2 portions of protein, that gives you 600 milligrams of calcium. You get the rest from the vegetables.
Yeah.
And very, very hard to have a fruit, salads, and meat just like that without any calcium. It makes it very difficult for you. It's difficult on your nerves, actually. Calcium is very steadying. And it's actually, over a period of time, it can be fairly bad, particularly for the ladies who may be, at a certain point in their life, inclined to lose substance out of their bones.
Bone density,
So you do need to consider the whole calcium. Now, guys can maybe get away with it a bit more, but the ladies know. So calcium comes into it.
And there is an association between calcium and weight loss, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me, Jamie. Indeed, a powerful association, and that's a big feature of the weight loss literature.
Yeah.
I think they found that the ordinary person doesn't get enough calcium. As a broad statement, they may, large groups of the population only get about, let's say, we call it 600 milligrams of calcium a day. It's not enough. It doesn't stack up over months and over years. Now, if you go up to 1,000 or 1,200 milligrams of calcium, this is where you put more dairy products of some kind or another. It could be very low fat. It could be like the casein. It could be cottage cheese. It could be other forms of high calcium foods. You put that in, suddenly populations that take that are slimmer just straight away.
Wow.
Just by, let's say, doubling the amount of calcium from an inadequate level to a slightly more than adequate level.
So, something like sardines and that red salmon is very good. I know strictly on a low fat diet, you mightn't be having those foods, but there's loads of calcium in the bones there, isn't there?
Bones are a great source of calcium. I mean, some of you, some diehards for nutrition may be out there making bone broth, and it's all good. Yeah. It's great stuff, and it provides calcium. And that is one way around the calcium problem, but you do need a way around it, whichever. And you could eat fairly large amount. If you took 2 cans of sardines a day, as far as I remember, that's going to give you, maybe about, it could give you as much as 700 milligrams of calcium. It's like when you take that, you need no more calcium. You take some vegetables with, that gives you a daily dose. And it's very absorbable calcium too. So there's a way forward, possibly. 2 cans of sardines, can you hack it?
Yeah. My son likes it.
But it works. And here's a hint, Jamie. I used to take sardines in a salad. You make a big salad, get the can of sardines, throw it in, mix it all around, and you just eat that, right? If you chop the salad fine, have the sardines in it, very, very nice. And you could put, condiment or whatever, close to nature again, onto that. Cider vinegar or whatever you like.
Yeah,
and
I like the tinned red salmon, more on a low carbohydrate diet. The diet's maybe slightly higher in fat, but mix in the cream cheese, smoked salmon, the tinned salmon together, and you get a huge amount of calcium in with it. But it's obviously, it does make such a difference. So if we're just going back, so that people are clear, we're suggesting obviously that we take out starchy carbohydrates in both approaches initially to help the person to lose weight. And sometimes people have this misconception or misperception, maybe, that we're all about just low carbohydrate diets and following a fat and protein, but that's actually not true. And really, it's the diet, again, that the person's prepared to follow. That's going to be the best type diet. And we often cycle between a diet that's high in fat and low in fat. Yeah. And often people will maintain, continue to lose weight actually on the low fat diet, and it's so effective. So what then is our approach? The person has lost weight, they're getting close to their target weight, and maybe they're thinking, I'd really like some more variety in my diet. So where do we go from here? What sort of maintenance plans, and maybe continue to see results, but maybe with more variation?
Yeah, you could put a cup of carbohydrate in, a cup of carbohydrate food. In other words, a cup of rice, a cup of porridge, a cup of oatmeal. Um, can you think of others? I mean, there can be buckwheat. You could have even that yellow corn is a carbohydrate,
Yeah,
and as long as you don't take too much of it, then
yeah,
people who work out in the gym, bodybuilders, if you like, or people who want to maintain shape, may allow themselves up to 100 grams of carbohydrates, and that would be the best part of a cup of these cereal foods, or it could take the form of a couple of slices of brown bread, but then no more.
yeah. And Rivita,
For
things like that,
maintenance,
the
yeah.
rye crisp
And
bread.
I think that if you confine yourself, yes, to crisp bread, then yeah, you'll probably win. And that, believe it or not, after about, let's say, a month of being on a fruits and salads and meat diet, if you choose to go that, fruit, salad, meat, and dairy and low-fat dairy products uh, type of routine, you will want carbohydrates because you tend to get a bit hungry on that kind of a diet. The trick could be to put in small amounts of carbohydrate, just as you're saying,
Yeah.
Jamie. And I think that would work out for people.
Yeah, because honestly, it's something that we often have to cover with our team, as in our trainers, just to sort of get them to understand. I think, because often it's the simple approach is put somebody on a particular program, and as long as it's working. But I think for the person to see what they're going to do in the long term, it's great to be able to see what sort of variety and what they can add, and what's actually going to give them great results, but also great energy, and then really improve their health. So then that's probably my next question is, so when we go for health then, so we're dealing with most modern illnesses by getting people to reduce insulin, to substitute in those kind of good foods, getting them to lose weight. That's going to or tick a lot of boxes. So where do we go after that if we're thinking overall health? What other areas can we make big improvements with just small tweaks, but the person's going to notice a big difference?
Over the past few years, there's been an effort at a propaganda campaign saying, "Oh, fat is good, fat is normal. Don't discriminate against fat." Well, this whole present COVID thing has blown that out because it's the overweight people are suffering the worst, and it's
Yeah,
highly dangerous to catch this thing when you're
yeah,
overweight.
yeah,
So, so what you're saying there is a major step towards health. It really is. Now, after that, then you can learn about the use of food supplements to bring up your immunity. It's as simple as that. And immunity is an awful lot to do with stress, not just vitamins, it's to do with stress.
mhm,
So part of the benefit of the food supplements can be to deal with stress, and that's where vitamin C comes in. That's where zinc can come in. These
mhm,
things are beneficial against, as well as directly supporting your immune system, they're beneficial in terms of resilience. This is where the nucleic acids in a liver supplement can come in, or even if you eat liver, yeah,
yeah,
that it's a different kind of a food and it supports your body in a different way. It supports your glands and your reaction to the environment in a different way, your immunity also. Now, vitamin D, nobody in the Northern Hemisphere gets enough vitamin D. We put a decent dose of vitamin D in our flagship, which is the Cell Rejuvenation
oh,
Mix.
brilliant
Take
product.
60 of those every day. It contains vitamin C, it contains vitamin D, 2,000 micrograms, which
Yeah,
is safe and useful dose. And uh, it contains a host of other things that also support your immune system. And hardly a day goes by, but I take some of those, and I think it's very, very helpful.
yeah,
Um,
I find
Having
an
said that,
enormous difference in that product.
in a simple way, you can take a form of vitamin C, any form that we have different forms available, and you would take some zinc with that. That would be a fundamental approach. And now you're on Melania's program, right, which contains the vitamin C and the zinc and the vitamin D primarily, and also uh, substances such as quercetin. Quercetin is an important part of the rejuvenation mix, and that too, it functions like that famous hydroxychloroquine that had previously been used to ameliorate the symptoms of COVID-19. So these supplements can be much more potent than the ordinary person may realize, and we're not talking about taking them at the level of the one a day. You can buy quite inexpensive supplements, which are at what they call the RDA level, right? Just a daily amount, which is very, very small, and which is supposed to match what you're supposed to get from food.
Yeah.
But no, for some of the nutrients, you do far better to take quite a lot more. And we're allowed to even make a point of this, that for stress, you need to be taking about 1 gram of vitamin C a day, and that helps fortify you against any kind of stress, including the stress of physical exertion, such as training or even mental stresses that may occur. The stress of being locked down.
And any particular form of vitamin C when you're taking it in that quantity? Is there one form that's better than
first
another?
of all, yeah, if you were to take a really high class multivitamin plus detox nutrient, such as cell rejuvenation mix, that'll give you 600 milligrams of vitamin C, which is adequate. If you wanted to go a little more, you can take 1 sachet of the Immunocy product, the Energy C product, and that's a very nice orange drink that you could take. And the most inexpensive way of doing any of it is the vitamin C powder, the non-acid vitamin C powder that we have, which you can take in between meals, or you can put it in, if you're allowed carbohydrates on your diet, you can put it in a little bit of apple juice, and you can take that down, and that can so easily give you 1 or maybe 2 grams of vitamin C according to your choice, and very, very helpful. Now, that is the kind of vitamin C that under certain circumstances they could be using for treatment. In fact, my doctor friend in Mongolia, on my recommendation, has been presenting to her colleagues on the whole use of vitamin C in therapy and prevention. And it's this type of vitamin C we're talking about.
Yeah.
She's taken up the use of this type of vitamin C. So, these things, we've got to recognize the value of the proper dosing, the proper amounts, the proper intakes of these vitamins. And it may not always be down to the minimal level.
So people are going to be at this stage, I'm sure, very familiar with the advantages of vitamin D, which we've already mentioned, but mega doses of vitamin D might not be recommended. So what is a safe level for people? Because it is important that people don't go wild and start taking huge amounts of vitamin D.
You see, what people forget about is the interplay between vitamin D and calcium. That vitamin D may have part of its effect through raising calcium levels. And you could have large numbers of people that don't allow themselves enough calcium in their diet. And so vitamin D has its effect through that. Now, I don't think you really need massive doses of vitamin D. It's okay, so it's arguable. But once you go beyond, let me tell you, that's 3,000 international units, right?
Yeah.
Or 75 micrograms. Once you go beyond that, there's a danger of calcification. And this is well recognized all over the world. And that's the reason why authorities are hesitant to recommend really high levels of vitamin D.
Yeah.
So they will probably agree that 2,000 or even 3,000 international units is going to work well for people. Go beyond that and you can get excess calcification, particularly in a country like Ireland, where there's probably a tradition of taking dairy products which contain decent amounts of calcium. So we need to be a little cautious in this. And some of the proponents of really high amounts of vitamin D have not been able to demonstrate good health on their own part.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Yeah. So we did promise ourselves that we would try and keep these nutrition talks short and to the point. So if we were just to sum up in conclusion, we would be talking about really to get a person to help them to lose weight. We're reducing carbohydrates. We're particularly looking at sugar and initially anyway, starchy carbohydrates. And people could choose between doing a diet that's higher in fat and low in carbohydrate, or they could go more for the low fat variety. And then after that, we're really looking at, I suppose, making sure that people are getting good fats. If they're eating fats, the calcium is going to be important. And then focusing on things like vitamin C and vitamin D and a general sort of antioxidant multivitamin just to really protect the immune system. And I suppose a quick nod and note that it's important to help the body to deal with stress. Have I left anything out? Is that that's what we've covered?
Well, we can say the rest on another talk.
Exactly. Yeah. Brilliant. So if you do, thanks so much everybody who's been leaving comments. I can see them coming in and they are popping up on screen. So Pam, Marlo, good to see you from Belize. Jackie, thank you very much. Cora. And I suppose if I scroll up, I can see all sorts of comments. So really appreciate it. Thanks, Mark, Sheila. And some comments coming in from India. Chris, great to see you. Haven't seen you in a long time. So thanks very much, everybody, for joining us today. We will be here next week at the same time, I think, Martin. We're going to make it a regular slot for the next 4 weeks anyway. Yeah, great. So
thank you very much.
I've just forced him to agree. That was a sneaky way of doing it. Yeah. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. Really appreciate it. If you do have any questions for future topics, please do drop them in and we will get back to them. And any supplements you'd like us to discuss, we'd also love to do that too. So thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. And we will see you next week. All the best. Goodbye.